Producer of the Year for Amy Winehouse's Back to Black, 2 for Record of the Year for her single Rehab, and his own single, Uptown Funk, featuring Bruno Mars. He's joined in conversation today by Michael Wood, a pop music critic at the Los Angeles Times. Everyone, please give it up for Mark and Michael.
Thanks so much for coming out, everybody.
Hello, hello. How are you, man?
Good.
It's good to see you.
Who doesn't want to spend Sunday in a bookstore? Just all their friends. This is the best.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little chat and then some audience Q&A. We'll get into it. You recently moved back to New York from LA. Spent a hot minute here, yeah. Would you have written this book if you hadn't moved back to New York?
That's why you are who you are. That's such a good question. It's nothing I would have thought about. It's nothing I've ever been asked before. That is so interesting. Maybe not, actually. Because I do think that, it's a very... I couldn't imagine writing this book not in New York. I definitely was in Los Angeles for spells while I was writing it, but I think the nostalgia and the walking around New York, because it's about a 90s New York and the clubs are different, the buildings are different. It's a ghost story in some ways. So I think it was walking through all those streets that were such an amazing new frontier for me in the 90s when I was a kid, and where the clubs are, and just, whether it's a froyo or a bank or whatever it is now, I'm sure that put me in that mindset a little bit. You
have got a good line in your book about, you're in LA, it's like in the 90s, you're playing a gig here, and you say, the vibes in LA were weird. On my way back from the booth, someone who looked a lot like Mark Wahlberg stared me down for no apparent reason. At 1:40 a.m., the bartender announced last call, and someone explained that clubs in LA close at 2, which convinced me that this city and I were fundamentally incompatible.
Which is completely not true. I mean, what I mean is, I've lived in LA, I've had some of my most prolific times, I love it. I just was just my first experience of LA was just wait, what do you mean they're ringing a bell? It's only 1:30, It was so weird as well, because as a DJ, you planned your whole night. After 5 years of playing in New York, and you knew 10 to 11 was classics, 11 to 12 was old school hip hop, 12 to 2 was new hip hop, 3 was dancehall, R&B, and coming out here and seeing DJs for the first time being oh my god, I have to rethink the entire way that I play. This is a very nerdy, just small point about the difference, but going to see DJs like AM and Vice and people and seeing how they made their sets and stuff. But yeah, I mean, essentially, it's much healthier to leave a club at 2 and not 7 in the morning. So it's it's hard to argue that it's bad. But it was kind of weird. I do remember thinking that.
I mean, the, city fathers or something would say, nothing good happens between 2 and 4. What, from a DJ perspective, what are the good things that happen between 2 and 4? Having lived in a city where you were allowed to play until 4 a.m., what's something that happens between 2 and 4 that couldn't have happened before 2?
3 to 4 especially, that last hour of the night, even where you start to lose some of your dance where people are going, but you start to play the stuff that you love the most. And then the people that are dancing for you at the very end are the people who are there because you've won and earned their trust through the whole night by having a great time. So that is one thing, but then at the same time, if I'm in LA, that's 1:30 to 2. That doesn't have to be 2 to 4, but it's this special thing. It's I don't care at the very end if there's only 17 people on the dance floor. If I'm playing Stevie Wonder, All I Do, that is my absolute dream. And those people are just having the best time. That is as good as being packed with 500 people at the peak of the night, or 1,000, or whatever it is.
Is DJing ever, one for you, one for me? What's a good example of a record where you're hey man, I gave this crowd everything they wanted for 2 hours. I'm playing a record for me now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what the end of the night was about. So I'd always play I think it's usually more like 7 for you, 1 for me, because you can't afford as a DJ to lose like one song you clear the dance floor. That's gonna take you 4 songs to get everybody back. So it's like 7 for you, 1 for me. But yeah, I remember you would always, it was like a Trojan horse, the idea of like a song that you knew that you really loved that you were gonna definitely play that night. So you thought all day about how you were gonna sneak it in, the songs you were gonna play it in between. And then there were songs like, there's a beautiful old disco song called Bougie Bougie by Ashford and Simpson. Like that was always one of those songs that was like a little weird and avant-garde. Or you played that song week after week until it became like, this obscure song became a shared language.
This book chose an interesting line between memoir and journalism. Your story of your life, but I was struck by the fact that you made a point of interviewing people who were there. And you quote some of them. Some, it seems like you didn't quote, but they shaped your understanding of this time. So I just want you to talk about how you thought about what form this book took. Is it memoir? Is it journalism? Is it somewhere between the two?
I think it's a memoir in the sense that I wanted to write a book about DJing. I've been hesitant to mention this book, like, because it's such a North Star for me, and now I don't want everybody to just think I was like blatantly trying to rip it off, but I'm not gonna lie. Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential is just such an incredible book in the way that it writes about this profession, and it doesn't hurt that it's a profession that takes place at night in New York City, and you're dealing and surrounded by lunatics all the time. And then I thought, I don't know anything about cooking. I'm a terrible cook, but you know, thank you. But there was like and it's the second he's telling about his life and thinking, then chapter 3 is just about like knives. I don't care about knives. I cared about knives after I read that chapter, and I was like, I need to write about needles and styluses and slip mats and cartridges and these things that might be nerdy or might not matter to people, but I have to write it with that passion and zeal. So I'm really gotten pretty far from the question at this point, but I think that I just, I wanted to write about the DJ experience in a way that every DJ would read this and hopefully at least see one thing and go like, man, yes, I was in a club, not literally the same club, but with a crazy cokehead lunatic owner, and the turntables were bolted to the wall, and I had to keep turning around all night just to see if people were dancing. Because all that thing, that passion of wanting to play for $50 and 3 drink tickets to 7 people dancing because you love it. And then the lows, even on a great night, the lights go on in the room and you're the only person there, and you're like, wait, where's my fun? So I wanted to write about that, and then I realized that the 90s was a fascinating time, especially in New York, because it's not very documented. It's before camera phones. You had Biggie, Wu-Tang, Jay-Z, the Fugees, and then you had Missy and Timbaland and Aaliyah, like, and Pharrell and people in the clubs. So everyone's making their records in New York. And they were there every night mingling and rubbing shoulders with everybody because there was no VIP service and there was no bottle service, and the clubs really were this melting pot. So to do that, though, oh look, there's the Bourdain book staring at me right there. He's like, don't mess this up. Stop saying my name. I realize as a DJ, you just see this tiny sliver of the thing. Like, you know, of course, you know, nights where Biggie would come down to the club, you know, of course I would hear about it and all at the end of the night, but I could see about this much of the club. I didn't know what happened when he showed up the door with 100 dudes from East New York and was like, made this amazing kind of scene at the door. So I had to interview bouncers, door guys, bar backs, everybody to try and paint the picture as richly as I could. And then also, this is 30 years ago. I've done some wear and tear on my brain since then. You know, it was important to jog these memories as well.
A boring process question, perhaps, but I'll ask it. Did you tape your interviews, and then did you transcribe them and go through them? What? I mean, having the conversation is useful, just period. But then, like, once you had this material from these folks, what did you do with it?
Yeah, I started, when I was writing the outline, I interviewed like 20 or 30 people. By the time I started writing the book, I interviewed maybe 150 people, and then I started to I'm gonna save. I was only interviewing people on the chapters that they were in because I was gonna start to get away from me like crazy. And what's really sad is actually there are a few people that I was like, I'm gonna call them in 2 months when I get to that chapter, and a few people actually passed away during the time of writing the book. So like DJ Never and Fat Man Scoop and some very important people from the scene. But yeah, I would just interview. I think I didn't discover that you could like, there's AI software to like annotate conversations for like the last 6 months of the book, so that's a drag. But I would write it down. Things that really stood out were just so obvious that somebody reminded me of something insanely embarrassing that I did. And, that was great. And then, and that was it. So I'd kind of annotate it and then sort of transcribe it. Some of it's like voice notes in a phone. Some of it I was recording like, it's such a bad process. Sometimes I had like Ableton recording from my laptop where I was like calling someone on speakerphone, like whatever I could figure out how to do.
Yeah. I think the Bourdain, it's a person's story, but it's also kind of a broader cultural history. And I think you're kind of undertaking a similar project in this book. I wondered how you thought about the balance of kind of telling your own story, but also wanting to broaden it out so that somebody else, a peer, a friend, a collaborator, an employer, might have recognized what you were talking about at that time. Was it important, in other words, for this book to reflect the experiences of people other than you? Is that the way you thought about it?
Yeah. I thought that the book would only be maybe compelling if like there's visceral stuff and you're on a journey of like a teenage kid into the early 20s finding their passion and falling on their face, and you know, the requisite compulsion and addiction of what goes on at night, meaning my own. But I did, anytime, there were so many important people that made the scene what it was and who helped me and who I learned from. And they were incredible characters. They were so exciting. They were like such integral, like my friend Lisa Cooper, who was like an older woman who mentored me in the scene, and she was like a muse to Keith Haring and Robert Mapplethorpe, and was like the cool den mother of downtown. Like, I knew that there were certain people whose in really interesting lives would enrich this book.
How did you think about, I mean, I think attention in any memoir is, look, not everybody in your life, you have favorable stories to tell these days. You have a great part where you talk about a roommate who, you know, ratted you out to an employer because you'd taken a better gig to play at Buddha Bar one night instead of the place.
I might read that passage, so...
Okay. So,
sure, definitely.
We'll tee it up there. The question is, did you worry about, I don't know, hurting people's feelings in your book?
There are some people, like there's one story earlier in the book that in my high school band, because I actually started off wanting to play guitar in a band in high school, and then everybody in the band was so much better than me. I was just like, oh, like if this is what being a musician is, I might have to find something else and sort of indirectly led me to DJing. But I wanted to get my band this really big deal gig, and I totally sold out my best friend, Sean Lennon, to do it, because I went up to the club owner and I said, oh, you should put me on the band. It was opening for this group, Arrested Development, and he said, no, sorry, the bill's full, why would we put you on? And I suddenly was like, what if I got my friend Sean to play? And they were like, Sean who? And I was like, Sean Lennon? Like, I was so startled by my own, like, betrayal and guile and how quickly I could say that. And then we got the gig, and I sort of lied to Sean, and I said, like, oh, we got this great gig, it would be so cool if you got up and played with us. And I realized that maybe in 30 years of our friendship, I'd never told him that story. I knew he wasn't going to be mad at me, it was so long ago, but showing him that chapter, some other people who I, maybe betrayed is a strong word, but, you know, it was really important to show everybody that, you know. A lot of quite personal stuff about my parents and their tough lives, and, you know, my 0 to 5 was not really a picnic. They were all cool with it. Weirdly, my dad's only takeaway from reading the book was like, I never listened to Hot Chocolate. That's the only thing he was mad about. It was important to show everybody the stuff way before it came out.
Unfortunately for you, now that you brought that story up, you have to tell the people what your band was called. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, our band was called The Whole Earth Mamas, which is just, if you can think of a worse name, please tell me. There was something called the Whole Earth Catalog that was like before the organic like explosion in the 60s, 70s. It was like a catalog where you could order granola and hacky sacks. I don't know. And our lead singer of our band, his mom was like a big proponent of the Whole Earth catalog. So we were on stage. No, he said threw it out at a band meeting, and we were like, "Oh, that's a terrible name." And then at our first gig, he was just like, "We're the Whole Earth Mamas," because he was the only person with a microphone, and that's what we were. And we got booked to play all these like pro-feminist, like women-only anti-fur rallies because they assumed that we were mamas. We'd walk on stage like, "Those kids are mamas," but whatever.
It's a bad name. Sorry. You tell a great story about you thought you'd finished this book, but you sent it off to, I think, a cousin.
My wife's cousin is this really amazing journalist and writer named Abe Street, who wrote an amazing book about a Native American basketball team in Montana, high school team, and just a very soulful, beautiful writer.
So he reads your draft.
Like you.
Well, I don't know about that. He reads your draft and he says, "Hey man," he gives you what any writer or journalist, the words that will strike fear into your heart, which is like, "There's a lot of good stuff here." You're just like, oof.
Yeah, so he gave it to me. I saw him over Christmas, and I was like, "I finished this book." And he was like, "Cool, you want me to read it?" And I was like, "You're this really high up journalist. You must be so busy. Like, you really want to read my book?" He's like, "Yeah." So he texts me like that night. He's like, "It's really good." I'm like, "Oh, good. That's a relief." He's like, "I'm really into it. I wouldn't say if I wasn't." Then silence for 3 days. My phone rings and I pick up, and the first thing he says is, "There's a permanence to books." I'm like, "Oh God." So I was like, "How long do I need?" He's like, 6 months. So I called my editor, and I got 3 months. He was like, "There's a lot of good stuff here, but you should elevate it, and you should also do a word check for the word cool, because I lost count at 173 times." So he started to write it, and then he had to come here to cover the fires, because he did cover the fires previously and got really close with the fire department here and the people that were fighting.
Yeah.
And he put me with his features editor from the New Yorker, this woman named Hannah Walentz. She put me into an 18-hour boot camp writing thing for the last 3 months, where it really lifted the book and such. Like, I'm horrified to think what that other version that might have come out. Plus, I would have been canceled 8 times, so it's really, it was a blessing.
I mean, you can say it's a blessing now, but put me back in your headspace when your friend or your wife's cousin gives you this information. Are you, all right, yeah, I'm eager to go back in. I'm gonna do this. You know he's right.
Yeah.
You know the material deserves to be elevated, but you also know that it's gonna be a slog. Like, you got a lot of work left to do.
Yeah.
What's the mindset?
Yes. I know it was going to be work, but I love the challenge, and I will do, whether I'm in the studio working on a song or it was this thing, I will do anything if there's a chance that it could be better.
Okay.
And I was almost relieved, because when I sent it to my publisher, when I thought it was done, he was like, "Great, let's go." And I remember thinking, why don't I feel like popping the champagne? Like, I was looking at my wife like, I don't feel like celebrating. There's something about this. And then it was just a real godsend that Abe was there at Christmas that day, and was like, "I'll read your book." Yeah.
Shout out to Abe.
Yeah.
The sense of action, the sense of this is where it now needs to be, that you eventually did reach with this book, is it similar or completely dissimilar from the feeling you get when you know a record has reached the state that it needs to be?
Yeah. There's a certain point when you're making a record that you just know, I've made this as good as it can be.
Yeah.
Like, as good as I can possibly make it with our tools. I remember, and I'm not comparing this book to Uptown Funk by any means. I wish it were Uptown Funk, but I remember, like, after 7 months of slogging and toiling over that song, and like amazing creative times, and then total like fighting back and forth. No, this should be the bass line. No, this should be the bass line. And then Bruno always wins every argument. Just being like, when it was done, just being like, yes, like, this is being able to stand and listen to it with your arms crossed. Like, this is as good as I can make it. That's how I feel with this book. This is as good as I could have got it.
That sounds like a sad way of putting it.
I know it does. It's like,
Rejoice!
I mean, in a way, like, I am super proud of it. Like, yeah.
are there stories that, you don't have to say what they are, although you're invited to, are there stories you held back because it was like, it's too personal, too revealing, I don't want to put somebody on blast? Like, how committed, I think this is a very honest book, and you talk about stuff that I wouldn't necessarily have thought that you were going to talk about, but, you know, how honest are we talking?
Everything is really honest. It's more honest about some things than I ever intended to make it.
Interesting.
There's no romantic relationships in that. That just felt like such a opening a can of worms, going to people's lives have changed and evolved, and it's just not really, it's not that book. But everything else was there. Only 2 names that I changed because I couldn't find people at the very end, so I had to just I didn't want to put anyone on blast without their permission. And everything else is how it was. I mean, even embarrassing stories that I learned that I totally forgot about, like, I put them in because people reminded me of, like, the time I, went up and made a total ass out of myself in front of Jay-Z, like, one of the first times I met him in the club, and I was like, I don't care, that's a good story. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Of favorite words, favorite adjectives, just writerly tics that we always sort of come back to, and it's if you know, you know. Musicians have a musical version of that, obviously. I'm sure there are chord changes that you reach for, or certain rhythmic devices, whatever. Did you find in the course of writing this book that you had certain writerly tics as well? Are there words, I mean, your friend told you that you used cool way too many times. Are there other examples of that where you're like, something you realized you kind of keep coming back to as a writer?
I couldn't really tell, but I had this really, I had never studied writing or anything before, so when I decided I was going to write this book, I literally went into a bookstore and I was like, where are the books on writing a book? They're over there, and whatever references to help. And I bought 2 books. I bought Stephen King's On Writing, and I bought Mary Karr's The Art of Memoir. And so
why those 2?
They just look good. And I was like, everyone said the Stephen King one was good. What I loved about the Stephen King one, it has that he gives you the guidelines for the rigor. It's 5 hours locked in a basement, which I literally did. So my wife would come down into our basement, and I'd just be talking to myself, and she would hear me saying the weirdest things, and some of them she still teases me. One time she walked, I don't even know what the context of this, but I was just going, and the label said, and now anytime this book comes out, she just looks at me and she's like, and the label said.
That's a real open the door look in.
Yeah.
Close the door.
Yeah. And then Mary Karr's The Art of Memoir was amazing, and even more effective, she has a suggested reading list in the back of 300 books, and I found so many books I loved in that, and I would write down words. That's a cool word, I should use that. So I kept this bulletin board of anecdotes, stories, DJ things that I wanted to talk about, like as simple as why white DJs don't talk on the microphone, things that were just about DJing that could go in any chapter. And then when I was working on a specific chapter, I would just pin them to that board. So I'd be maybe it's a word I want to use, this anecdote, something about, so, and then I don't think I used any of those words, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things I like about this book is to use a musical term, you sort of vary the tempo. There are times when you move quite briskly through an experience or through an era, and there are times where you really slow down and you sort of savor a story and you really tell it in some minute detail. And this is a little whatever, but it did feel very musical to me. It felt like a musical touch, you know what I mean? To sort of, as opposed to just keeping one kind of clip through the book, you really kind of change it up, which is a kind of a satisfying reading experience.
Right. Thank you.
That's the question.
That must have been by accident. I mean, I think there's something about DJing, DJing has probably informed everything about how I make music. There's a certain thing, especially if you play a lot of different genres, and now what they call open format DJing, for what AM and many DJs have been doing for decades. You don't see music as these you don't see funk, hip hop, disco, techno, these different things. So then I'm making music because you know how they can blend together. So I think, like, in the same way that DJing has somehow infiltrated the way that I make music, I'm sure there's something about that mindset that is just somehow, even when I set out to write a book, it's not intentional, that it would make sense.
Why did you do, there's like a number of sort of, we'll call them interludes, maybe? There's like sort of bits of the story that you tell in the form of like a sort of a screenplay, or there's like a little bit of like how-to, like why, how did it occur to you to insert those little chunks where you sort of break away from the narrative?
The first one happened by accident, and it just seemed like a nice break, and I was like, oh, this breaks up the prose, and this will be a nice, whatever, what do you call the thing that you eat between things to reset your taste buds?
Oh yeah, what's that? A palate cleanser.
A palate cleanser or something like that. And I just thought it just kind of just makes the mind it was just a nice break. And I'm not, I don't want to say this with this thing in front of me, I'm not the greatest writer in the world. So like anything that gave me the chance to kind of just break from just straight prose was a good thing.
Get your copies, folks.
Yeah. But the breaks are amazing. Should I do a little? Do you guys want a reading? I don't mind. I can read, or we can just go straight to Q&A.
Lay it on us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna abridge this chapter because I know everyone has places to get to, but I'm gonna read. I've kind of truncated this chapter. So this takes place in the middle of the book. This is chapter 6, and I realized as I was actually doing the audiobook that I can only read standing up, so... I also have to be stood like Billy Joe Armstrong. No, it was crazy that I went to do the audiobook, and I go in and I have like my book with me, and they're like laughing. I'm like, what? They're like, well, we don't read from the book. We have an iPad because it rustles the pages, and it's this whole thing. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, stupid me. And then after 2 days of trying to read this iPad and the whole, like the words, it's just looking like mush. The end of the second day, finally, I was like, can I just please try and read something from the book? And I read like one paragraph, like, just read the book, we'll fix the rustling. Like, so I had to like go back and then finish those first. Always just like also to have this like Wu-Tang tendency to put the mic exactly on my mouth, and that sounds crazy. So I did learn that reading from the book and standing up were like kind of the better thing to do. So this is, I'm like 20. I've had 2 years of DJing in the New York scene. I've kind of made my way up a little bit, but then I've like pissed off some of the wrong people, and now I've kind of been kicked out of this cool downtown scene because I've been like stealing mixes from other DJs sort of good-heartedly. And so I'm now DJing sort of like just not cool, whatever, bar, lounges, gigs on the Upper East Side, whatever, just to pay rent. So that's about where this happens. Okay. That's really not what that phone sounded like. It was like a Sony digital phone from the 90s, so it's like, okay, let me try it again. Bring! The muffled chirp of the Sony cordless echoed from somewhere in the room, sounding like an 8-bit baby bird that had fallen from its nest. But where was it? Under a pillow, in the pocket of a hoodie, inside last night's pizza box? I glanced at my roommate Jason, sprawled on the other couch, his thumbs twitching on the PlayStation, the only sign of life. Jason, you got the phone? Nah, he muttered, eyes glued to the screen. Bring! I scanned the room, then shoved my hand between the cushions, pulling out 2 cigarette butts, 1 Nike sock, and a couple of headphone adapters. Bring! The answering machine clicked on. Hey, this is Evan from Boulevard, looking for Mark Ronson. I need a DJ tonight. Boulevard? I had 10 seconds before this guy hung up and moved on, and it was the only decent job offer I'd had in months. The voice continued, get back to me ASAP, but I dropped to my knees, thrusting my arm under the couch until my fingers brushed plastic. Found it! The phone was wedged stuck. All I could do was hit talk. Yes, this is he, I shouted into the void beneath the couch. I need a DJ tonight, 11 to 4. You free? Hell yes. An end to my banishment from downtown. See you tonight. I hung up, still sprawled on the floor. The squalor of the living room stretched before me, overflowing ashtrays, half-eaten mozzarella sticks, and greasy takeout boxes and records scattered everywhere. Thanks to my making good on my promise to my mother, I had enrolled as an undergraduate at NYU. But I haven't even considered living in the dorms. I was back in the city to DJ while going to college, not the other way around. Rent was covered by a $1,000 monthly stipend from a trust fund my grandfather had set up before he died. Thanks to my departed grandfather, as long as I booked 2 gigs a week, I could keep things afloat. But ever since Tilt was my one cool gig that I lost. The gigs have been humbling. After work parties, random uptown bars, whatever helped out. Buddha Bar, on the other hand. I had heard its name so many times. Have you been to Buddha Bar? We're going to Buddha Bar tonight. Did you hear what happened to Buddha Bar last Sunday? I'm just keeping track of this stuff that I'm sparing you, which is so great, you'll definitely want to read it. Most nights, unless you were a supermodel, new supermodels, or related to one, you weren't getting in. The exception seemed to be Lenny Kravitz. When he walked into a room, supermodels materialized out of thin air. That didn't stop my friend Simon Rex and me from wasting our nights outside declaring, "We're with Lenny! He must have forgot to put us on the list." Rejection and denial, New York's most renewable resource. Even a Times Square Applebee's was drenched in attitude. But not tonight. Tonight, I was getting in. There was one sort of problem. I already had a gig at the not-so-cool Reminiscent Lounge, a bar on the Upper East Side. Marcus, the owner, had hired me after catching me downtown. The Reminisce Lounge crowd wasn't hip, but they danced to the same shit people dance to downtown and needed to let off steam as much as anyone else. I felt something honorable in playing for the working stiffs. What was a gigging bar DJ if not Billy Joel's Piano Man in Air Max 90s, minus the harmonica and the tip jar? I liked Marcus and was grateful for the check, but Buddha Bar, well, that was 10 rungs up the ladder. There was no way I was schlepping uptown tonight, not after this opportunity had come my way. I picked up the phone to call Marcus and his machine answered. A small victory out the gate. Hey, Marcus, definitely coming down with something, so I won't be in. Don't worry, land out someone great to fill in. Okay, see you next week. Someone disinfect this microphone. I called my boy Max Glazer, a great DJ who worked at 8 Ball Records. Hey man, I said. I gave him the rundown. Busy tonight, but you could try Cosmo, pretty sure he's free. I hung up and hesitated. It was dicey, bringing in someone I didn't know to cover for me with so much on the line, but I didn't have a choice. I dialed Cosmo and told him the deal. He sounded reliable enough, though a faint indifference colored his voice. I hung up, crisis averted, time to get ready. One last base to cover. Hey, Jason? He hit pause on the PlayStation and turned to me. I got an offer to play Buddha Bar tonight. It's a big opportunity. So I called Reminisce. I told him I'm sick. If Marcus calls, just back me up. Say I'm out cold in bed. Got you, bro. Once in the cab, we headed down Lexington and a cooling breeze came through the cracked window. It was a perfect New York summer dusk, blue fading into black like a Rothko painting. I stepped out, gripping the first crate with both hands, and with a shove of my shoulder, the thick double doors swung open. But hold up, what the fuck? There was a DJ already here. A black dude in a flat wool cap already set up and spinning like this was his gig. I walked over. Hey, I'm Mark. I'm supposed to be DJing tonight? Nope. I'm Jeff Brown, and I was booked to play tonight. Who the fuck are you? Then he went right back to cueing his next record as if I wasn't the only person on the empty dance floor. Oh, maybe there's been a mistake. I'm sure there's Man, you know what? He said, slamming his headphones down onto the mixer. I'm sick of all you white boy DJs coming around and taking all the fucking gigs. This is bullshit, man. I'm done with it. The force of his words hit hard, mainly because he was completely right. Downtown was flooded with white DJs spinning black music. Everyone knew it. No one questioned the credibility of Stretch Armstrong. But the clubs, while diverse on the dance floor, were all in white neighborhoods and run by white owners. Some felt more comfortable around white DJs. A few were straight up racist. Your average white DJ had too many things working in their favor, myself included. I had no comeback. Plus, this whole thing felt like karma for lying to Marcus. On the other hand, I really wanted this gig. So I stepped back up to Jeff and I gave it another shot. I'm sure there's some kind of deal where we can both play and still get paid. Would you mind if I talk to the manager for both of us? He gave me half a shrug. After some back and forth, we worked it out. Split the time, split the pay, and a couple of songs into our shaky start. He saw I knew my shit. and began to thaw. I liked him too. He was prickly, with a sharp tongue, good taste. As the place filled up, our back and forth was clicking. I took a gulp of my third Absolute Cranberry and caught a silhouette barreling through the door. This can't be happening, but it was. Marcus from Reminisce Lounge was striding purposely through the crowd, looking furious. He scanned the room until his gaze landed on the booth, my chest tight, and he marched towards me. I'm going to start monitoring the cursing because I realize it's Sunday afternoon and we're near the children's section. What the F is going on here, he said. The question was clearly rhetorical. I got this call. I was going to call, but it's because for the second time that night I had nothing to say. I was so in the wrong. The only move was to shut up. You stood me up tonight. What happened to Cosmo, though? Who the F is Cosmo? Jesus. Cosmo bailed. Disastrous. But one thing didn't make sense. How did Marcus know I was at Buddha Bar? This probably wasn't the moment to ask. You know what? Marcus said, his voice cold now. Don't come back to work. He turned, grabbed his date's hand, and stormed out the door. The entire club seemed enveloped in fog. Lauryn Hill was playing, but her voice was muffled and distant. I liked Marcus. He looked out for me, trusted me, and I'd abandoned him. I was already struggling for work, and now I just lost one of the few things I had going for me. I wondered if Jeff was enjoying this, but instead he handed me the headphones. DJ 101 for You Got Next. The crowd got into it, and my mood lifted. The energy was feeding my ego, and the Absolute Cranberry was feeding something else. Soon, I was feeling pretty damn good again. Jeff and I were trading tracks and laughs, all tensions a thing of the past. On the bumpy ride home, I thought about the mess I'd made. The vodka and validation had felt good, but it had hardly been worth the emotional fallout. I was stupid to think one night at Buddha Bar would change anything. Tonight was just like any other night, heading home, depleted, alone, and a little too tipsy. Dragging my crates through the front door, I found Jason where I'd left him. Hey man, how was your night? I asked, setting my crates down. Chill, some dope new games I picked up. Cool, anyone call for me? I paused. Oh yeah, this guy Marcus, he asked where you were, so I told him you were DJing down at Buddha Bar. I stared at my crates, too tired to be angry. I needed a new roommate though.
Absolute and Cranberry, huh?
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy that what I used to think was like, I guess it's what you drank in the thing. It was just like pure sugar and potato. It's just like,
not a good choice, bro.
I can't believe, yeah, I used to think like Long Island iced teas are so cool. Like, it's just like sugar. Yeah.
How old were you during that moment?
That was 95. I was maybe just 20.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do some audience Q&A. Yes?
Okay, great.
Got some cues here. Oh, sorry, dude. All right. Let's see. This is from KK. What parts of the book were happiest to revisit the memories of, and which were the most challenging?
Like I said before, a lot of people in this book have passed away, some before I started the book. I kept thinking like I wish they were there to interview or share these stories about, and then you feel a little bit of this extra thing to honor them. But they were still happy, you know? And then calling people that I hadn't necessarily spoke to in 20, 25 years, some of these people not knowing how their lives were, like most people, like I was very fortunate to make it out of this night scene and kind of transition, and as were other people, but some people didn't. And especially during lockdown, so many DJs I know just started seeing, like, I started seeing medical GoFundMes, like people that relied on that, like cash job. So yeah, calling people, at first you can't just be like, hey, we haven't spoken in so long. Do you remember any funny stories about me? Like, it's, you know, I really wanted to like show people, earn their trust again. So, but catching up and reminiscing with all these old heads was also really great. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it turned out to be perhaps a more emotional experience than you'd anticipated.
Yeah, and then writing about like my stepfather, who's a huge influence on me, and the whole book really takes place in the 90s except for the epilogue, which is me walking around with my 2-year-old daughter strapped to me and like a baby Bjorn, seeing all the clubs that are now no longer. And my stepdad, who's a huge influence on me musically, like he's quite heavy with Parkinson's, and I didn't realize starting to write about him at the end that would really, of all the things that I went through and whatever, like it was writing about him and that really kind of that had way more emotional impact on me. It was the first time as well, like in reading in the audiobook, that I had to I broke down and I was like, oh God, this must be for people that write books, like, and the whole thing is like, I hadn't planned for that.
Your reading was great, by the way, and I don't know if you're allowed to talk about audiobooks at Barnes & Noble, but hey, I'll ask. Did you listen to any audiobooks as like a way to sort of say like, oh, how do I want to read this? Like, how did I want to sort of do this? It's almost like a little play.
Yeah. People started to tell me what the best audiobooks were, and I was like, well, I don't want to listen to those because that'll be terrifying. So I actually didn't, but my wife heard me reading because I was trying to read a little snippet for the Instagram, and she was like, this is very bad. She sent me to her acting coach.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I knew there was no way that I was going to turn into Laurence Olivier in the course of 2 months.
Yeah.
But it really helped. This amazing woman, Joan Rosenfeld, helped me with pacing, and then so by the time I read it. And then I realized, to be honest, I read Julia Fox's book Down the Drain, and I really enjoyed it. And there was this a sound going around on TikTok of a portion of it where she's like, it's kind of amazing, I don't know if anyone saw it, where she's like, I was down on the ground looking for cocaine in the rug, but I realized she has quite a monotone way of talking as well, but it's like, I don't care, because I know it's her voice and it's her story, so I started to be like, it just has to be me and not suck, and then it'll be okay.
I mean, I guess I'm putting you on the spot, but if you had to choose, would you rather someone read this book or listen to the audiobook?
I'm a reader, so I think I would prefer on the page, but I've had some people send me messages or whatever and say I read the book and I really liked it, and then I read the audiobook and I love that too, and I'm like, who would do that? Who would want to spend that much time with me? But I was also incredibly grateful, but I just wanted it to be good. I haven't listened to it just in the same way I don't like to hear my voice on it, answering machine or anything, interview.
This question is a good direct one.
My favorite and the one where I made my name was this club on a Tuesday night called Sweet Thing, and it moved clubs a few times, but that was where it started. Up to that point, I'd opened for other DJs, for Stretch Armstrong and Funkmaster Flex and stuff, but that was the first place where, as the main DJ, I really made my name. And it started as a party with 50 people. We filled this club that was 300 people, then it moved to a bigger club that was 2,000, and that was when Fat Joe and Big Pun and Biggie and Jay-Z and these people started coming down to the nights I played. And we played mostly old school funk and soul, and then with a little bit of hip hop, so it was really it was an amazing vibe in there.
You have a very good story in the book where you talk about playing a gig where you were opening for Kid Capri.
Yeah.
And then you end up basically playing over his time. And then the way you tell it, it got me thinking about, I wonder if you remember that story now differently at your age than you experienced it. The way you tell it is you pay deference to a pioneer, and you see it with that certain lens. But I wondered at the time how you felt. Was there a party that was like, dude, I'm gonna get to play into this dude's time?
No, it was awkward as hell.
Okay.
It was just like it was in the book. Yeah, it was just Puffy climbing up. It was just Puffy had a very famous 29th birthday party that was in his sort of coming out period of taking over New York society, and it was just this moment where he yelled, "Get the other DJ back on!" He's climbing up this wall and yelling, and I'm like, oh God. So I got back on, but no, I didn't enjoy it at the time.
You tell it with a great sort of a way to communicate the emotional complication of the moment.
Right.
What was one of your very favorite and outstanding moments while DJing clubs and or parties? A very favorite and outstanding moment.
I mean, so by the end of the 90s, where the club ends, and that was when the hip-hop scene suddenly got, in downtown New York, was suddenly very commercial. It was like getting into the bling era, and it was like all the clubs were like Leo and Mariah Carey and Jay-Z and, you know, obviously Diddy, like, so it was very celebratory and rowdy, and it was probably very exciting for me as a 22-year-old kid to be DJing 10 feet away from all the people that made the records that I love to play. But it was also, looking back, kind of a little, probably superficial and shallow. It was like this time where everything got a bit status obsessed. But like playing a song like Hard Knock Life, you know, 500 people shouting or singing. Nobody can sing Hard Knock Life without sounding crazy off key unless you're a 6-year-old. So like all these like grown-ups going, it's a hard knock life, you know? And but like Jay-Z is like the person who's made the song is literally in my eye line, like with, you know, presiding over this whole scene. There were times where like the energy in the rooms was just so electric, it was like combustible in these tiny basements. So that's one that stands out to me.
Can you remember a moment where you're looking out from your booth and you can see, you know, a great, a Jay, a whoever, and you're like, I'm gonna try to drop this particular record to impress this particular person?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I try not to just play everybody's record, because that's, I mean, unless you just felt like that was gonna work. But I remember Prince was in this one club that I DJ'd at, and I remember hearing like the kind of whispers reverberated up to the booth, which is on the balcony. Prince is here, Prince is here. I remember thinking like, I'm gonna play a record that's gonna be like so obscure and so good and funky, like Prince is gonna have to come up and ask what it was. So I pulled out Mambo number 5 now. And I found this like obscure Latin funk record, and sure enough it's playing for like a little while, and I see not Prince, but I see like 2 7-foot security guys coming my way, and I'm sure like Prince is between them, you know, because it's like a packed club. And he comes up to the booth and he's just kind of like standing there with like a VIP rope here, and like the booth is where you are, so he's just like standing looking at me like so Prince, like like waiting for me to let him in. I was like, wait a minute, like come on. He's like, what is this? And I show him the record, and then I'm queuing up my next record, which was actually Stevie Wonder, All I Do, and it was on a bootleg because there was no real 12-inch for that. So as a DJ, you sometimes play bootleg 12 inches because if you play off the album, it's feedback in the club. You know, the turntables, it's very nerdy, technical, but you needed a 12-inch, and it was a bootleg. And at that time, Prince was on that crazy like publicity campaign against bootlegging and this whole thing, and he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Stevie Wonder, All I Do, but it's a bootleg. Well, it's only a DJ bootleg, and I own it, and I have it on CD, and I have it on vinyl and the thing. But this is just what I play when I play in the club." And he starts to take out this phone. It was probably like a brick, like '98 or something. He's like, he starts to be like, "I'm gonna have to call Stevie right now, wake him up in the middle of the night in LA, and say there's a DJ in New York playing bootlegs of his stuff." I'm like, no, and he was obviously just messing with me. He was not gonna wake up Stevie Wonder, but it was pretty cool. And then he kind of hung out in the club.
Obscurity, great. You obviously made the right call in terms of attracting Prince's interest. But like, how obscure is too obscure? Do you ever play something you're like, this is gonna get him, and people are like, what? We don't want. What is this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not like so much, because after years and years of playing, you do have a general idea like what's a little too far, but then you always just have that like that record at the ready that, you know, if it's not there, you know you're gonna get it back. But,
you can bring them back.
Yeah.
What's a life preserver record? What's like, this will always work?
Yeah, there was a really legendary, great New York DJ who's no longer with us called K Slay, and he used to call it, we talk about it, he called it the Save Your Ass Crate, you know, like what's in the Save Your Ass Crate, and the obvious things in that time are like the Jackson 5, I Want You Back, or like Missy, Work It, or I mean there's so many, Before I Let Go. Yeah, you always had those ready. And then you actually always had to have the After the Fight records, like in case a giant brawl broke out, you would have like those 3 records too in the front, which would be like Three Little Birds by Bob Marley, or like Let's Get It On, something like when the crazy, Roadhouse thing broke out, you could diffuse it.
Is there a Save Your Ass record that works across demographics? I mean, I think the Frankie Beverly record's a good example of, like, there are people who that song is incredibly important to them, and then there are people who literally don't know that song. Are there songs that, like, all humans know?
Yes, I Want You Back, definitely. It's just like,
yeah.
They played it last night at a wedding, and it's just like, I mean, you find different ways to play songs now that you've played 1,000 times, or edits, or you play the a cappella over something else, but that's one.
Yeah. That shift, do you think, made the biggest difference between being talented and actually becoming successful? It's like a Zen koan. I'm going to read that again here. What mindset shift do you think made the biggest difference between being talented and actually becoming successful?
I think there's so many people that are so talented. I think it's a combination of just like, I know it sounds like such a cliche, but it's just the hard work. It's the determination. It's even for someone who's like fairly insecure and anxiety-ridden like me, there has to be a certain amount of self-belief and luck. Like, it's because there's so many talented, there are more talented DJs than me, there are more talented musicians and arrangers than me. It's just like, it's just the work and the luck, I think.
If you had to isolate one moment in your life that demonstrates the importance of luck, what would it be?
The moment that Amy Winehouse showed up outside my studio front door in New York City, 2006. Yeah.
Do you now in hindsight understand what happened to make that happen?
I know literally it was because some A&R guy said like, hey, there's this girl, Amy Winehouse, she's in town, New York for a week, you want to meet her? But I know why I was prepared because of that, even though I'd been trying to make music for 10 years at that point, never had a hit, whatever, all that preparation and all those years in the clubs, understanding records and arrangements and all that stuff, it certainly prepped me for that opportunity.
Yeah. Are you a butterfly flaps its wings type of person? Do you think about like, if da-da-da hadn't happened, then da-da-da wouldn't happen, blah, blah, blah?
Yes, I truly believe if I hadn't met her that day, I would not be sitting here talking about this book.
Interesting. All right, we got one more, and then I think we're going to do signing.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. How night people? Were there any moments of rediscovery?
Yes. So one of the main things is, a friend of mine read the book, and he was like, I really like the book. He's like, my main takeaway is that you just really miss DJing with vinyl. He's like, I think you should only DJ with vinyl again till the end of the year. And I was like, this was like February or March. I was like, okay. Like, it just sounded like such a crazy idea. I've been DJing digitally for 20 years. The idea of like carrying these 80-pound crates all the way across town in the back of cabs and having to find these old records seemed so, like a pain in the ass. But I was like, okay, I'll try it, because he's a smart friend. He always has weird ideas that I usually bear some fruit. And it's been incredible. It's actually like going back to playing vinyl and rediscovering my love for certain things that I'd forgotten about, or just what that is, and I love it. So this book has really been this lovely. It was almost supposed to be like my farewell to DJing, or this part of my life, and instead it's reignited it. And then I have been working on music as well the whole time while I was making this book, because I was trying to make a record at the same time. So that music will come at some point. It is sort of like a kindred spirit to this book.
When you play out of town, do you like bring records on the plane? How do you do that?
I have been, but
it seems arduous.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how much I used to play gigs in LA all the time, and I'd just be standing under the luggage belt, just like praying the bag comes out, like carrying these giant 2 Techniques bags, like trying to shove them into the overhead compartment, but it was also really fun.
You ever buy a seat for your records? Be that guy?
No, that's crazy.
Thank you, Mark Ronson.
Okay,
appreciate it.
Oh, sure.